Hi and welcome. This is Football.Africa, and it's saying it like it is. I'm with my old mate, not that old, Rob
Wow,
Moore.
getting on, Peter, getting on.
Oh, yeah, we all are. Listen, Rob, we promised the guys Mamelodi Sundowns, but before we talk about Sundowns, let's the expert on the transfer window. Transfer window, come to its close. What are your thoughts? What are your comments on the South African transfer window?
South African transfer window, I think the big winner in terms of being sellers were Stellenbosch. You know, they managed to do some phenomenal deals. You know, by my estimation, they might have made 50 million rand probably on selling four players or whatever. Somewhere around there, I would estimate. So they were the big winners. You're going to make the comment that, well, yeah, they won. They won in terms of the bank account. They're sitting third from bottom in the league. But remember, Peter, they had a tough start last year, and
Yeah.
they went straight into overdrive. You know, after Christmas time. You know, and went all the way up. They made a semi-final now already. They're a well-run club. They'll get back on track. Um,
And I give you that. I want to ask you a question though. You've been a club owner. I look at clubs like a tree. If you cut all the branches and you keep cutting those branches, at some time that tree stops growing or doesn't grow as well as it should. And
yeah,
each transfer window, they've done exceptionally well. They are the best sellers. They are. I mean, Ajax Cape Town were probably in your time, and that also great sellers of players. But you were producing. You had a great academy. They keep bringing in new players and then selling them on as well. So they're doing it well. So it's really one of two things. Either they've got that discipline correct, the infrastructure, the plan, that they know when they sell somebody, a bit like Brighton in England, that when they sell somebody, they know they've got a ready replacement. And if that's the case, well, then not going to make any difference. They're going to keep growing because they are a well-run club and a good coach and well-organized side. But if they don't have those ready replacements, then they'll go the way of other clubs that sell but don't replace adequately. And it's all about recruitment. So,
yeah.
yeah,
I.e. Southampton, if you
yeah,
remember, they used to sell really well over a couple of years. If I was running Stellenbosch now, I would look at this as a golden transfer window, and I would say I made a lot of money. So therefore, this time next year, I really only want to be selling one piece
mm,
uh, at a reasonable price, but no more than one player, one key player for a good sum, and then only having to replace one piece at a time. When you're starting to replace 4 or 5 pieces at a time, that's when you have a problem. And I would really sort of take the money now and take a medium-term view and say now for the next couple of years, 2, 3 years, let's just be replacing one piece at a time.
look, they sold, excuse me, two of their best players, Mendieta and Mthethwe, um, and but they're both 30 or close to 30, and they've
Yeah.
got big money from both of those players. So business-wise, great transfer window.
And
Chiefs,
Makanya as well. They got good money for Makanya.
yeah,
For Makanya,
outstanding. Yeah, I
yeah.
think they've probably got more for him than anybody else.
I can't say about that, but let's just say that I think they made a lot of money. And
Yeah,
but yeah, but you're right. They sold the right profile of player to sell. Um, and when you get really good money for a young player, then you got to do it. So,
yeah,
but yeah, they must bank it now, and they must. They're not going to change the way they run. You know,
right.
they buy low, they sell high. They they're not the best payers salary wise, but they give players opportunity. So, so yeah, I think they must.
I want to make 2 points to the viewers and listeners out there, Rob. That interesting that when we spoke to you about how would you run a club and how would you recommend that Chiefs run their club and even Pirates, and why Ajax was so successful as a club from a performance point of view as well as from a transfer point of view, and you summed it up exactly that. You said if you were owning the club, Chiefs, Pirates, or involved in those clubs, what you do is you get a young player coming through like you did with Pino, who's one of your best players, and you get him to a stage where you can sell him for big money. Hence,
Yeah,
that's your situation. And then you
if
move your older player.
you don't need too much, that you paint it into a corner and you can't sell. You know.
Correct. So they've done that with the Mokwena. Then the second thing you said, your star players, when they're getting close to the 27, 28, 29, 30, it will get rid of them while you can still get big money for them. And that's what they've done as well. Obviously,
Perfect.
you guys led the players coming through. So I think maybe Stellenbosch were listening to you, or that's what they're already doing. The
Yeah,
other thing
perfect.
that's interesting, let's just recap quickly for the listeners out there. And guys, you out there, please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. Your likes and subscribe mean a lot to us, and your comments even more. So please don't forget that. But if you look what we said in our podcast about Chiefs and Pirates, I don't know if you can remember, Rob. Actually, what we've said has come true.
Yeah,
You look at you said in particular, Pirates need to start well,
yeah.
and they haven't
And
really.
Chiefs mustn't drop points against teams they should be winning,
Yeah,
beating, for
yeah.
example, and they haven't done that. So, they've lost points that they shouldn't have lost. So it's going according to the script. We're obviously going to dive deeper in with Sundowns to
Yeah.
analyze, what does the season hold for them.
But
But
what was
you
critical
know,
for Pirates?
I'm not deviating, Peter, from what I said back a couple of months ago. First
Yeah,
Sundown, second Pirates, probably third Supersport, maybe fourth Chiefs, maybe.
we agree. But we said Pirates have got to start well to put pressure on Sundowns,
Yeah,
and unfortunately they haven't started well. They, I think something like 16 points behind Sundowns. Now, obviously, they got 3 games in hand, but they still got to win. So they're
yeah,
not putting pressure on Sundowns. Chiefs are, I think 13 points behind Sundowns. So, you know,
yeah,
what we said mustn't happen, although we predicted it would happen, has
yeah.
happened, is that basically Sundowns are running away with this league. A quarter of the league's gone, and I don't think anybody would bet against them winning the league.
Yeah. Peter, I listen, there's some, obviously, I'm not privy to all the information, but at the end of the day, I can't understand this high number of games of Pirates that have been postponed. It's not
Mm.
in their interest to have these games postponed. In my opinion, Pirates or any club, if they want to dethrone Sundowns, they've got to be going toe to toe with Sundowns every match day. So that Sundowns are consistently looking over their shoulders saying, yeah, we won today, but so did they. We're only a point ahead, or we're only 2 points ahead. And then as soon as Sundowns have a slip up, because it can happen, then and the second place team has won their game, suddenly it's a different ballgame. But now you're in a situation where Pirates are 16 points behind, 3 games in hand, but they're 16 points behind still. And it's
Mm.
it's a tough ask.
So Rob, my comments to Chiefs and Pirates as a South African football lover and as an ex-player, as an ex-owner, even as ex-Soccer Laduma owner, been involved in the game for a long time. My message to Chiefs and Pirates is that you're letting South African football down, because this country needs, our league needs Chiefs and Pirates to push Sundowns to the limit. They've got
We
almost like a moral duty. They've got to do it.
we need a competitive league.
Yeah,
Any league needs to be competitive. It's for the first time in Germany there was a bit of excitement in the last game of the season last season when Dortmund could have won the league, but it was the first time in a number of years.
yeah.
It's PSG win the league most times. It's not great. It's not great. And
It's not good for Sundowns either, because they'll never reach their full potential because they're not getting enough pressure from Chiefs and Pirates. I mean, obviously there was a good game between Pirates and Sundowns, competitive game, I should say, a week ago in midweek where
yeah,
Sundowns beat them. But it was a competitive game, and it wasn't the best football game, but it was a competitive game. But it's all very well doing that. Then Pirates go and drop points against smaller teams, or they struggle to score goals. Pirates and Chiefs have got to get their act together, although Pirates look like they're getting it more, and at least Chiefs are. But they can't keep starting over every season. Sundowns build and build and build and get stronger and stronger every season. Chiefs and Pirates seem to have this, a restart, another restart. And when you restart, you start again from the bottom as opposed to growing.
I mean, how many players did Chiefs sign this last window? Another
Well,
7 or 8, wasn't it?
yeah. And quite late. Probably their best signing was just made this week. So
Yeah.
And even on those new signings, the striker Gonzalez is question marks. The striker from the other big boy, Che Guevara, whatever his name is also question mark. So, again, we spoke about the proper planning that needs to be done. Sundowns and big teams all over the world get their recruitment recruitment right. Your recruitment is everything. And I don't think Chiefs in particular have got their recruitment right. And they need to get that right to certainly make an impact next season if they're not going to make it this season. I wonder even if their signings that they've made this season are going to turn out to be the kind of signings that can take Chiefs to the next level. There's a big question mark in my eyes on a lot of those players. Pirates have signed better and they're looking in a better position, but they need consistency.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's jump to
best signing that Chiefs made this window. You know where my money is?
I know what you're going to say.
Cavan Johnson.
That's a good signing. That's a good signing. Never didn't think of that.
To me, the best identifier of quality young players in South Africa. For me, if I want an opinion on how good is this kid really, I will 100% fully respect Cavan's opinion. He's a top judge of young quality, and not only can he see a player, but he can develop a young player. He had the Pinnars, the Mofokings back in the day. A lot of these guys that came out of School of Excellence. Cavan was a key guy, and I actually sent Kaizer Jr. a message to tell him, okay, that was a good signing. So now, it's going to be important now to see what role Cavan can play now in plugging in some young players into, because Chiefs was on this whole thing a little while back with Zwane wanting to play academy players, but the ones that I think came through didn't really fulfill the level of what they needed, I think. So now Cavan's got to raise the bar. He's got to bring better quality that can play and make an impact, not just make numbers,
But he's going to need 2-3 years to get that system going properly. Yeah. And hopefully Chiefs will give him the kind of free rein to make that happen and not micromanage or so on. But anyway, let's go to Sundowns. My big thing with Sundowns, Rob, going forward is that Sundowns are winning this league without extending themselves. Yeah. And I think Sundowns have got to become their own opposition. I think Sundowns, and particularly Rhulani, because I'm very excited about what he's achieved as a coach. This 32-game unbeaten run is a phenomenal achievement. He's bringing in young players. With this youngster, 16-year-old scored, Mokwena scored the goal, although given it to him on a plate by Peter Shalulile. I don't believe Ronaldo would have done that, but he did. They bring in young players in. He's got this unbeaten run. What I would like Sundowns to try and look at is can they become the invincibles of South Africa, like Arsenal did? Can they go this entire season unbeaten? And more importantly, I think they can play more expansively. Yes, they can grind down a result, which they've proved. They can battle, which they've proved. But they've got the players that can really play expansive football and thump some of these teams 6, 7, 8, quite frankly. And I think it's important that they challenge themselves from a football. And I'm not saying they're not challenging themselves, because obviously they're a hardworking team. They would never be where they are unless they were totally the most professional team in this country from on the park point of view, organizational point of view, and a recruitment point of view. So they're at a 10 out of 10 at this current level. I would like them to go to another level, which is not that easy, is to get themselves in a situation they're playing a kind of football never seen in South Africa before, a kind of a Man City situation where they're playing winning football, they're beating teams, but people are going, wow, because they're the one team that can represent us from an international level, and I mean in Africa, a continental level, and in the league, that people say, goodness me, this South African team wins things, but they play in a way in which we love watching them. And I think they've got it in themselves to actually play at a higher level and hit some teams for 6, 7, 8. On top of that, keep the ball going forward, keeping the ball that the opposition don't even touch the ball. They've got this in it. Last point I want to make, Rob, and then you can sort of dissect what I've said, is that I've gone through their squad. They could play literally 3 teams in this PSL. And certainly their first 2 teams, I would say, would come first and second. But they've got over 30 players that could do well in this PSL. And, a lot of those players are not signed players. They've brought through the ranks themselves as well. So they've got the players, they've got the coach. He's now, since he's taken over and been his own man without having two so-called partners on the bench, he's proven that he can take this team to another level. And I think Rhulani is a guy who can take this team into an expansive footballing team that blows the minds of African football. And I really hope that happens. And I'd be disappointed if it doesn't happen because they've got the ability to do that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Peter. I mean, if you look at their 8 league games to date, with the exception of Arrows, where they won 4-0, okay?
And Arrows are second on the log, by the way.
Exactly. So you look at it now, that was a hell of a result. But with the exception of that, 4 of those 8 games, they've only won by 1-goal margins. I mean, I'm talking league games, okay? Yeah. So, that's not, and we're talking about Chipper, we're talking about Richards Bay, we're talking about Polokwane, 1-goal winning margins. So at the end of the day, it begs the question, in my opinion, are they a boxer capable of having a knockout punch? Have they got? Not only have they got the knockout punch, have they got the killer instinct to deliver it? Okay, or are they a boxer that is a technical boxer who wants to run it by the textbook and win it on points all the time? So basically, toy with the opposition and go the full 12 rounds and win it by points. I want to see a champion. I want to see a champion with a knockout punch. I want to see a champion win like you, 5, 6, 7, 8-0. If it's got to be 8, it must be 8, because the team on the receiving end of the 8 have to realize we ain't good enough. We got to change our game, and we've got to become better. So it doesn't do anybody a favor, 1-0 winning, 1-goal winning margins, because it lulls the opposition team into a false sense of security, I think. So a champion team has got a duty to do, and that is to knock opponents out.
I think they've done the hard work. They can take it to the next level. They can become the Muhammad Ali of South African football, where they can knock you out and they can out dance you. And I think Sun got that in them, and that's got to be the next. They've grinded out results and I suppose they're preparing to a certain extent, a bit like because of Africa, it's not going to be that easy. And they've got to have that mentality, and they've shown they can win 1-0, scrape a result with ease. Actually, quite frankly, with ease against Pirates. On your point about lacking the killer punch, I mean, when you've got Peter the Great, as I call him up front, that he is an exceptional striker by South African standards. In fact, if he went overseas when he was much younger, I think because he's got the pace, he can finish his times, his runs well. He's not bad in the air. When you've got somebody like him up front, and he's a runner as well, and he's brave with a good instinct, and he's great in Africa, when you've got somebody like him up front, you're always going to have goals in your team. He's been injured for a while, and I was very surprised. I thought, would they have anybody to take his place? And Ribeiro has obviously done very, very well as well. So he can score goals. He's strong.
Ribeiro, Peter, an over-reliance on Ribeiro.
Right now, but not.
Without Ribeiro and the time that Shalulile was out, there's no one else is scoring goals. I mean, you got Temba Zwane, a talented player, but no goals, 1 assist in the league so far this season. Last season, I think he made only 3 league goals. Now, but in seasons prior to that, he was doing much better, weighing in with much more goals. So why have the goals dried up for him? And why are there not more people contributing? Or why isn't there 2 other players that are sitting on 3 or 4 goals each? They need
a midfielder who brings in 10 goals a season, 8 goals a season as well. It's also healthy that the goals are spread around. Temba Zwane, incidentally, in my opinion, Temba Zwane's big weakness in his entire game has been finishing. I think Pitso Masmani even mentioned that once or twice. If he could score goals, because he gets himself in great positions, if he had a better goal ratio per game, I think he would have been, obviously he would have been twice the player. He could have played overseas. A super player, but that's never really been in his game. unfortunately. But I think the league makes it difficult for them to actually go to the next level because they don't have to. Mentally, it's very difficult. I mean, how do you tell players who know they're going to win, who know they're better? How do you tell them, well, do way more than win? You know, I mean, it's not an easy exercise.
No, I mean, Peter, look, the legendary teams, they come back season after season and repeat, you know, which Sundowns have done to this point, over the last few years. They have done that, but it takes special qualities to be able to do that. I mean,
Yeah,
that's why when you see Messi and Ronaldo win Player of the year after year over a period of 10 years or 15 years, you have to realize how special these guys are because you are basically, you've scaled Everest, you've come down to the bottom, and instead of going home and having a cigar, you've told the Sherpa, let's go again, no rest, and at the end of the day, you got to respect Sundowns for being able to climb that Everest season after season. But as you say, we need to now move on to the next level, because, you can't, you don't want them ultimately suffering from like what Paris Saint-Germain suffer. They win their league, they win it easily, it's predictable, but they fall short in Europe most seasons. And that's the real holy grail that they want. So, this is the key thing. How do Sundowns and how does the PSL get a situation together that can challenge Sundowns more for the benefit of what their ultimate goal is, and that's to win more Champions Leagues and ultimately World Club Cups. You want to be maybe the first African club to make the final of the World Cup for clubs,
Yeah, I agree. I think, there are two things we look at is that I think Rhulani has got the chance to do this because if you look at it, I think possibly one of the reasons they've been a bit cautious, and I may be wrong, and cautious may not be the right word, when they knew this record's there for the taking, I think you start going, okay, we don't want to lose because we want to have this unbeaten record. So possibly there was a little bit of caution in their play, purposely or psychologically, who knows? But there's certainly been a bit of cautious in some of their play. And now that record's been broken and they've got that title, I think now maybe it'll free them to play a little bit more expansively. But also, we have to be fair here. Rhulani's only been fully in charge of this team for a relatively short period of time. And he's putting his mark on this team. And they've shown, what I like is they've shown that they can keep goals out. They've shown that they can defend. They've shown that they can fight. They've shown that they're a proper team. And they've shown that they can control matches. So that's the hallmark of a well-coached side. That's the hallmark of a side that's got the basics right. Even though it's been quite easy for them to do that, but that in itself makes it difficult, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. Now I think I believe Rhulani is a student of, and I don't like to use the word student. Let me rather say an admirer of the way football should be played, an expansive game like the Real Madrid kind of football, a Man City kind of football, an Arsenal kind of football. So I think he's naturally will challenge himself to develop this with Sundowns, and I think this season and the following season will see Sundowns become much more of an expansive team, to the kind of the way Sundowns were when Roger Fatemba was playing and Chukwe were playing, where they played winning football and really expansive football. But again, Chiefs and Pirates were really challenging them as well, in particular Chiefs. So it forced them to do that. But I think that's going to happen. I don't know what are your thoughts on Rhulani?
I love Rhulani. My times I've met him and I've sat and I've chatted to him. He's passionate about football. He loves the game. He's the type of guy who I think could probably be locked in a room on his own and have a conversation with himself and play against himself in his own mind on behalf of both teams. He's that type.
He sounds like me. Sounds like me. I love football. I love South African football.
he's passionate, and he really. What I like about him as well is that he's got a great sense of humility, and also respect of people. Like not of me sitting opposite him, just general respect for mankind. He is a guy who wants, I think, to try to do good by people. And he's got a good value system, should I say? That's probably what I'm saying. And I think he's a. I think he's definitely he's a future national team coach. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I hope he goes overseas, actually. But anyway, I think, funny enough, Orlando Pirates have got a big role to play in his success because they gave him, the job as an assistant, and then they put him in the hot seat early on, and he made mistakes. There's no discussion. I mean, I think it was a frustrating period for him, and probably maybe for even the Pirates management at times, because the team didn't do well, and he learned to accept defeat there, I think, and he banged his head maybe against management at times and so on and so forth. But I think that spell at Pirates was a huge foundation for him. And obviously working with Pizzo early on as well, and secondly again. And also the time at Chipper where, he spent time at a club where you're not expected to win. So I think he's taken all those experiences and they've helped mold him to where he is right now. I think he's got a lot of time still left at Sundowns because he's young and he can take them to be the best footballing side in Africa. And I'd be interested in the Champions League what they call it, the Super League. Hopefully that comes about, he'll be able to show himself to a great extent there as well. But I think he should look at that Europe route, and it's very difficult, obviously, because a black coach from Africa hasn't made it big in Europe ever, and your starting point is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But who knows? Those times could change. A question, Rob, I want to ask you is, and I'd like to hear from fans, and when they comment, I'd like to hear their comment section on this. Is if you go through the Chiefs side and the Pirates side, name one player that would make the first 11 at Sundowns.
You're right.
I mean,
So,
Lepasse is a super striker, but would you put him in ahead of Peter the Great? No.
yeah.
So no. Lorch, he could be thereabouts playing wide, but he's always, he can't be there. Maybe Sabisi at the back could come in at a centre back. Maybe. Maela, maybe, but I don't think so. At Chiefs, Dolly, no, he's injured and he's not the player he was. Froslet right back, no, not a chance. Matheso, the guy they signed right now, good player, but would he be better than Mokwena or Boule or Rivaldo in the middle? No.
What about Saleng, Peter?
Saleng there, I don't know why I never thought of him. I'm thinking off the top of my head here. So Saleng wide right, yeah, he would. Would you play him wide right? Alenda sort of plays it to a certain extent. Saleng would be the only one on last season's form. By the way, so again, it's something you mentioned in the last podcast on Pirates is, can Saleng start on like a house on fire? Can he maintain what he did last season? And he's a good player and he obviously hasn't let the team down. But probably Saleng would be the one on last season's form that you could say, would he be in that side? But they don't play with wide men per se. It's their fullbacks that really play wide right now. They're narrow. But maybe Saleng. So one player out of 20 out of the Chiefs and Pirates squad, and that's an indication of A, how good they are, and B, how far behind Chiefs and Pirates are. And I'm sorry to say, we don't want that situation.
Yeah.
Rob, tell me something. Don't you think that one of the reasons for Sundown's success, though, is, you can have money, but if you don't necessarily recruit well. And if you look at their recruitment, they fit into a Sundowns kind of play. They're not signing players. A lot of people say they sign players so other teams can't play them. But, I don't think that's the aim of their way they operate. Or what's your comments on that?
Do I think they need as many players as they got? No.
Yeah.
Do I think that they need to have spent as much as they spent in total? I'm talking about it, not on the best 16 or the best 18.
Yeah, of course.
In total, I think they spent too much. But we've mentioned this before. Ownership knows their role at the club, and they don't overstep their boundaries in terms of getting involved in team selections and all that kind of stuff. They've got a very good director of football, uh, um, Fleming, who's a sharp operator, and the structure is just good. Everything is good about what they do. So their next challenge now, I think, beside the stuff we've already discussed today, playing the most beautiful football in Africa, having more of a knockout punch and winning games by higher margins when they are there on a plate. Beside all of that, what we've discussed, the next challenge now is how do we produce our own young players and bring in, even if it's just two a season, but absolute cream of the crop, how do they now get into that situation and bring through some of their own? Because the big clubs will always buy the whole world through. The big clubs will always buy. Man City got Foden, but it took him time to come through, and he had a coach who totally believed in him. There haven't been that many from the academy that have come through. The only exception is probably like a Barcelona, but more out of circumstance because they can't afford to buy players anymore, and because of the situations that they've found themselves in the modern time. But the big clubs always buy, so it will be now interesting to see that Sundowns can just find a little pocket of two players a season that can come through the academy and start making meaningful minutes in the first team.
Rob, I think it's a great summary, and we can almost end on Sundowns on that great summary because it's a great summary. But just a point, I've worked it out. Sundowns have got 3 teams of proper PSL players, 3 teams, and in that 3 teams, they would still have at least 3-4 players of proper PSL experience sitting on the bench, on the bench for over and above 33 players. And I don't think that's. I mean, if I was one of those players who were going nowhere near that first team, I would want to leave even for less money. That's just
100%.
Wouldn't you say that to your own players? Listen, guys, you're not getting a look in here. You're earning money, but let me take you somewhere else. I mean, the players who sit there.
Peter, I mean, let's take a situation like Maseko. He had an interesting season last year. Was he correct to go to Sundowns? I'm not sure. And this isn't to belittle Sundowns, not at all. But I would have looked at a different challenge if I was him. Maybe trying to get out. Out of the three young Player of the Year nominees, 2 of them went abroad, and the other one went to Sundowns. So I think that I just don't think it's necessary that Sundowns stockpile so many. It's not, and I would say that if I was them, even with African Champions League, you've said three starting 11s that are good enough to win the PSL. I would try.
The third team would definitely come in the top 4 or 5.
Well, I would try reduce that to 20, like let's say excluding goalkeepers, to 22 or 23 high quality outfield players. And then for the rest, I would put in 3 or 4 youngsters, and then you got your keepers, and that's what I would do. And I would rather just, would I have bought, if I was Sundowns, would I have bought players of 30 years old, like they have done for substantial money from Stellenbosch, for example? No, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that. I would have, if I'm going to spend that money, let me spend it on 20, 22, 23-year-olds.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what? It's their money, so they're obviously allowed to spend it. If I was a player, I would want to play regular football, but there's no doubt they're getting it right. They right now the most powerful team in the country, and they look like they're going to be the most powerful team in the country for a long, long time. We hope that power takes them into the finals and win Champions Leagues, and they do us proud.
Yeah.
Rob, moving on from Sundowns,
Yeah.
Bafana squad. One of your players, he's doing well overseas. Can't get a game.
Blom.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, Peter, I wouldn't want to necessarily, you don't want to get into a slagging match with the national team coach. Of course not. You want to support your national team and your.
He's quite happy to get into a slagging match with people, though.
But look, I don't know him. I've never spoken to him personally. I just think what was probably disappointing with that last camp was you name Blom in your preliminary squad, and you omit him from the final 22 or 23. But then you say the reason is because he hardly plays for his MLS team. Well, okay, we'll get on to that. But then why did you put him in your preliminary squad then? So that's number one. Number two, he does play. If you take the PSL season, started, let's say that the teams came back third week of June for preseason training, okay? From then until the preliminary squad was announced, until the final 23-man squad was announced. In that time, Blom had played 7 games, was suspended for the 8th game, and he had played 92% of the minutes in those games. So he played 7 of 8 games in that period that the PSL clubs came back to preseason. The PSL players, on the other hand, they had played something like 7 games, and there were players in there that had played far less minutes. Now, we're also not talking about, we're talking about a league that is a pretty decent league, the MLS. You got a couple of 1 or 2 decent players in there.
Is it the highest level of PSL?
Yeah, for sure. Overall, for sure. I would just say overall. And you're talking about, he's playing for a club, 92% of the minutes, who's top of their league. So Peter, it's simple. If you don't really rate the player, or you rate others better than him, no problem. You're the coach. Make it. That's your decision, because that's clearly what he thinks. Because he hasn't ever given Blom a chance, really. He's called him up, but he's never called him up against Morocco. Played 0 minutes. Called him up last year for games. Hardly played. So he obviously views Blom as somebody who's there or thereabouts, but not better than what I've got. No problem. But then say that. Don't say I'm left him out because he's hardly in his team, when that isn't the truth. You know what I'm saying, Peter? And that goes for any player. But then you look at his latest squad on the same theme. His latest squad, I just made a note. Albas played 13% of league minutes this season. Sotoli in Tondela, 2nd Division Portugal, 51% of league minutes. And Tsani, 38% league minutes of Chiefs. Tapelo Museko, 27% of league minutes at Sundowns. Call them up. So no problem if you have a line of thinking, but then be consistent. That's all any player asks for.
To all the viewers and listeners out there, by the way, you can see Rob feels very strongly about this. This wasn't pre-rehearsed, obviously, because when he's knocking out those stats, I thought, hang on, how do you know I was going to ask you the question?
I want to satisfy myself. When things get said about players, I want to satisfy myself. Is this true? Because when I saw that comment, I thought, but this isn't true. This is incorrect.
Yeah, no. Listen, I admire your passion for your club, and for, clearly that you got the numbers on your fingertips. Just a question. You're talking about the standard of. Has he played against Messi this season yet?
I don't think he did. I don't think he did, Peter.
That was Bruce just phoning you.
I'm not fighting with him, I was just making a point that if you're going to give a reason, have it backed up with real facts, not maybes. And if you like and you prefer other players, say it.
Yeah.
No problem,
Do you know, by the way, this is going to sound a little controversial possibly, and maybe Chiefs and Pirates fans would get annoyed with me, but if I was the Bafana coach, and I'm not the Bafana coach, the majority of the squad would consist of Sundowns players because they're by far the best in the country. They understand how to play together. Because the biggest problem in international football is understanding each other. I would play the Sundowns kind of style and bring in players, a couple of overseas boys who can raise the standard of the team. Otherwise, don't pick them. And at least you're going to get a kind of club atmosphere in that team and an understanding that certainly we should do you well against other African teams.
Well, Peter, if you look at it, coming back to your point earlier on in this discussion, how many Chiefs and Pirates players would be starting lineup of Sundowns? And we struggled. To name it, right? So therefore, and those are now Chiefs, Pirates, Sundowns, the three biggest clubs in the country. Okay, and not to offend Hunty, he's got a good unit. His success lies in his unit and the way he's able to coach them. Okay, I would say then, to your point with the national team, if the two biggest contenders against or three biggest contenders against Sundowns don't have a player that is a stitch on to make the Sundowns starting lineup, you're right what you're saying.
Yeah. Rob, fantastic. As always, I enjoyed it. Listeners out there and viewers out there, please like and subscribe, and please send us your comments. What do you think we said about Sundowns, and maybe we have another look at what we said initially about Pirates and Chiefs, and see if you agree that we say most of those things have come true. And we'll chat soon again.
We'll chat soon again, Peter, because you're now back in the land of having Wi-Fi. So now we'll get back into the saddle.
Cheers, man. Bye.
Ciao.